Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Hello and welcome back to Small Talk, Wallula's weekly podcast. My name is Zach and I'm joined by Craig and Lance. We're glad that you're with us today. We are looking at Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 52. We're actually looking at a sermon that Lance did not preach, or neither of us preached. It was Dave York who was here during the pastor swap. So we're going to be going through that sermon. And as a side note, this Sunday we're going to have Casey, who's going to be on deck. And so you were at Westside last week, and then now you're going to be at Dave's church,
right?
Coming up doing your sermon. And so they could be talking about you.
They
for their groups. Yeah. I don't know what they do, but I'm sure it's all good stuff. But in any case, we will be going through Mark chapter 10 as we start this new series on power. But before we do, we have the fun question, which goes like this. It says, what is one thing you are really looking forward to in the next 12 months? So in the next year, what in the next 12 months, what are you looking forward to, Craig?
I am looking forward to Colorado this summer.
Okay.
With Haley's family. The last time we were in Colorado, let's see, I guess Elsie was 1, so it'll be 5 years ago. I grew up going to Colorado every summer. That was what my family vacation was. We'd go camping.
I was going to say, I can't remember if you said you camped or not.
Yeah, we'd go camping every summer in Colorado. And so that's just what I was used to, and I enjoy it. I love being up in the mountains and enjoying hiking. And Colorado's a good mixture because we have people in the family that like to shop and do that sort of stuff. We also have people that like to just go walk around out in the mountains and hike. Right. So it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Are those opposites? I mean, I know they're not the same, but like you either are shopping on one side or hiking on another.
I don't know.
I mean, I can do both.
Yeah.
But that'll be, it's like middle of June we're going. So
okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
Your father and brother-in-law are kind of big time hikers, right?
They are.
They
are
just
they?
took another big hiking trip.
Big Bend National Park in Texas. They just did that over spring break.
Oh wow.
And it's funny, they've done a lot of these hiking trips, and typically when they get back they're like worn out, and Brady was like, I was ready to come home, but Gene this time was like ready to stay extra days and go hiking. But they did like 12 miles one day, one of the first days, and then shorter ones after that. But
wow, good for them.
I'm just trying to, I can't think of anything. I'm like, man, that's a lot.
Yeah. Now, when you went camping in the mountains as a kid, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I was wondering too. It was like legit camping?
What's legit camping?
Well, did you camp in a tent?
Yeah, it was a camper
trailer,
with like the pop-out beds.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would get there and have to crank it up, pull them out, and put the whole thing together.
Sure.
Yeah. We were creatures of habit, and so the last I don't know. My parents still have gone to the same place now that I used to go to like in high school.
Okay.
So Leadville, Colorado, Turquoise Lake, in the same spot every summer.
Wow.
And we would go, and when I was growing up, we just hop on mountain bikes and ride around the campground. And
How old were you when you stopped? Like, did you just up to your senior year?
I went 1 or 2 years into college, I think.
Oh wow.
Too.
Okay.
So, but they're still going every summer.
Wow. Do you guys have any desires to be? Because you're not a big. I don't ever hear you talking about camping. I know your kids are young, but are you guys gonna?
Does Haley like to camp? This is the real question.
Yes, that's
we're asking.
That's
here.
The underlying question.
Right.
We have gone camping once.
Pre-kids.
And that's pre-kids, very early on in the marriage, and that was it. So there's your answer. So, someday maybe
she's shopping.
So someday I'll
on
take
that spectrum that we talked about.
Someday I'll take my kids hiking.
Yeah, I've told Haley I'm waiting for the day when I can try to take them camping, and we'll see what they think about it.
Right.
Who knows?
Their experience. But you're just going to do. But like if you're going camping, you don't have a camper, so
I have a tent.
Yeah, so you'd be actual camping.
Yeah. I did tent camping in college and stuff. So
Sure.
Very cool.
I really like the idea of that.
the idea of it is, yeah.
I like the idea. Yeah. On paper, this sounds great. Yeah.
Sometime I'm going to try just with the kids like this. Put the tent in the backyard.
That's what we did.
Right.
See if we can last a night out there.
Sure.
See what that's
Don't
like.
make my mistake, because I promised the kids, and then I kept putting it off. And I was like, oh, we have to do this because winter's coming. And so it was, I remember it was about to drop a lot. So we did it whatever the night was, but it had already started to drop. So it was like 40 degrees. It was cold. And we were bundled up, we had a little fire going, and then we got in their sleeping bags like that. And we made it till like 11.
Yeah, no.
And then they were like, can we go in? I'm like, no problem. They still got the experience. They got to watch a movie in the tent, and then we went to bed, and then it wasn't too much longer after that they both want to go in. I'm like, well, that's okay. So
yeah, when I was a kid, sometimes I would just sleep outside on the deck. We had those old, you remember like in the 80s and 90s, the lounge, folding lounge,
kind of like pop up, or
yeah. Camp chairs, the full length ones. Just lay those out. And sleep as a kid on the
really
porch.
Wow. I don't know.
I don't know why.
I don't know why either. It just seems.
Does that seem weird?
I guess I'm too. I don't know if shelters are over it or pampered, or like you just slept outside, like no tent.
Have you ever slept outside? Just
no.
Nothing. Yeah.
I mean, in a tent, yes.
Yeah.
But no, not just like
just out.
Nah, no, not at all. No, not even. It hasn't even dawned on me. It seems so. I've enjoyed laying out, at night and being relaxed. But then I'm like, I want to go inside. Yeah. I don't know what's out here.
I think I've done that once.
We lived, kind of by a tree line. So
right.
It was not uncommon for if our trash was left out, that even raccoons or possums or whatever. Yeah. But not that I was worried about those coming at me. But I don't know.
I mean, my parents live on 40 acres, so there's not neighbors.
Right.
You're out.
Yeah,
on your own, sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's our camping experience. For me, the thing I'm really looking forward to in the next 12 months, I have two answers. I know it's only one, but the first one is so a lot of summers are really busy, VBS and camp and Honduras and conferences and whatnot. But Selah, my daughter, is moving up into middle school. So Graham's already in 7th grade. He's been with me for a couple of years now. But Selah now will be with me. And so we're going to like CIY mix, which is always fun to go to CIY events.
In student ministry, she's with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You haven't ignored her. Until she gets to middle.
I don't acknowledge.
I don't have anything to do with my kids until
not
middle
until
school.
They come
I was thinking the same
They
thing.
come to me.
Yeah. Kind of sounded like she lives in the basement.
No,
and you're like,
no,
you can come up here.
I beg your pardon. No, she's been with Katie consistently. I bring her to church. She's people have seen her.
Yes.
No, but she's going to be moving up into the student ministry, and so now it'll be my first event. I guess VBS a little bit, but there's a lot of kids there anyway. But yeah, so it just thinking. I don't know. Ever since they were born, I'm like, I wonder if I'll still be doing this when they get, if I'll have my own kids in it. And then, Graham came a couple years ago, and now so just for the sake of like, wow, it's here. I don't know.
Sure.
But maybe when it finally gets here, I'll be less nostalgic about it, because those events are hard, especially they're fun, but it's just a lot. So in theory, there's that. The other thing, though, as far as a fun thing, is I got tickets for us to go see Weird Al. So I like Weird Al, and so they've listened to him, and he's middle school level humor anyway. So he's going to be in Kansas City, and so shout out to Weird Al if anyone wants to go to that concert. It'll be a Starlight, but we got tickets. I think it's in late June, so we're gonna go. We're gonna go see that. So. And I've seen him once before live, and I'm telling you, even if you don't like him, it's an amazing concert. He's so good. There's so many costume changes. It's really, I'm just saying, if you've been to concerts at all, like even if you don't appreciate his music, you can appreciate the work he puts into it. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Both the summer, they're both like within 3 weeks of each other. So
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
So So I do think this question is long term. Maybe 12 months was too long.
Okay.
Because who knows?
Right.
What are you going to do 11 months from now?
Yeah, I was thinking I was thinking
We thought that
Christmas.
through.
What's going on next
Yeah.
Christmas?
Christmas
I know.
is included in the
Yeah, I
question.
know.
I guess. Yeah. Really looking forward to
Yeah,
Christmas.
next Super Bowl party.
Right. See, yeah.
Just can't wait.
Because I can't wait for the Chiefs to win.
Yeah. Getting back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think this summer, we have a vacation this summer, and we're going to go. One of the things we're going to do is go to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Have you been?
So no,
Oh,
never.
I think when one of these questions one time was kind of like a bucket list sort of topic, and I think you named that.
Maybe so. That's kind of a bucket list thing. Sure, for me. Yeah.
There you go. So Weird Al on my end, and
Different kind of nerd thing.
different guy. Yeah.
So we'll be.
I'm just gonna go walk around outside in a
That's
different
right.
state.
See nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Colorado is so cool.
Yeah.
It really is. And the mountains, and not just Colorado, I suppose, but the mountains. Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right.
So I've always wanted to learn to fly fish too. I like the
yeah.
I like the
I
idea
have
of
too.
camping,
Yeah.
and I like the idea of fly fishing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd really like it,
Right.
But I like
It
the
looks
idea
cool.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're out in the
so-
water with the waders.
So maybe you can take that on for me.
Yeah.
This summer.
My
Just-
dad did that a little bit, and we brought his pole and stuff to Colorado one time, and I don't remember if we caught anything or not. But yeah, I mean, you're standing out in the river, and
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah. Looks cool.
All right.
Yep.
There we go. All right. Well, we're all going to be living it up this summer. I'm sure everyone listening is pretty jealous of our 3 vacations. All right. Well,
Especially that Weird Al one.
You
were selling it.
Yeah. I don't have to work that hard at it.
Serving the ministry. This is what.
You want to? Okay. You're teasing about Weird Al. There's only been 3 people in all of music history that's had a top 10 hit in 4 decades. Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Weird Al.
So we went to this restaurant. We were just.
Oh, I thought we were moving on.
No,
But I guess.
no. We went to this restaurant while we were in Florida this last week. And it was a weird restaurant. Somebody had told Sherry, you have to go to this restaurant for the atmosphere, but it didn't fit we're on the beach or whatever, and it was an Irish pub kind of thing, so it didn't fit the surroundings really, and it was a little weird. And then our waiter rolled up and he started talking, and he's saying, okay, this is the special or whatever for the day. And then he named something on the menu, and he said this was Michael Jackson's favorite. And he came back and reordered this item on the menu. I don't even remember what it was, but he called it in or whatever and had it shipped or some story like that. And I just thought, what a weird pull. Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's what you're.
What
that says is you have no other stories,
Yeah.
between him and now that you could say.
Such a weird. Yeah, it's just like It didn't make me. I didn't order it.
Yeah.
I wasn't like
Not convinced.
me and Michael. We want to.
Yeah, you've had no other celebrities, no one else you can recommend that's been here.
Yeah. Can you name anybody I'd like to be less associated with? Sort of thing.
He's known for his wise choices throughout life.
We don't need to trash poor Michael, but
Poor Michael. All right.
Just a weird deal.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Are we done then? Is that it?
That's all I have to share.
I was joking
Good-
about
good
we
night,
should wrap
we're
this
all
up.
done.
Yeah. I was like, that was kind of a
You like
longer.
that one.
That was a lot longer answer for such a simple question than I thought it was going to be. We've been still talking. All right. Well, let's get to it then. We are looking at questions number 5 and 7. Number 5, it says, what do you know about the description of Jesus in Mark 10:45 as, quote, the Son of Man? So we hear this phrase a lot, Son of Man. So there's Son of God, Son of David, Son of Man. He's called the Son of Man. What do we know about that? Craig, I'll go with you. I remember you even talked about this a long time ago. Like you kind of did I
Yeah.
don't know if it's for your master's, but you had done a study on it.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Well, because this title, like early on in reading the Bible, Jesus calls himself the Son of Man over and over, and it's kind of one of those things that like I breezed over it for a while,
Right.
and never gave much thought to why he called himself that. And then, I think it was during my master's, I was writing a paper, and it was about Jesus. I don't remember what the topic was. It was your VBS answer. It's about Jesus. But I had to take a little deep dive into, I think, some of his titles, or how the crossover into the Old Testament, which is where this title comes from. But in the passage here, I'll just read it real quick. Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many. So that's just one of the many times that he references Son of Man, which is in Daniel 7. It's a part of a vision that Daniel has, and it's wild. Starts off with beasts coming out of the water that represent represent evil, worldly power, people that are in authority, but are using their power for evil and oppression. In that vision, he sees a throne, and God is given the title the Ancient of Days, and there's people around the throne. But then these beasts that come out of the water are killed, and their dominion is taken away, and it's kind of like this courtroom scene a little bit. And then towards the end of the vision, it says, coming on the clouds is one like a son of man, and there's an empty throne next to the Ancient of Days, God, and Jesus is placed on that throne. And so, first century Jews, they would have known this story and this vision. And so when Jesus comes in the New Testament and starts calling himself the Son of Man, that's so shocking to them, because they're waiting for someone that's fulfilling this role and going to be seated at the right hand of God. It's what makes them upset, angry, confused, and start to lash out. And he starts to say, I wrote down like some of the ways that he uses it, because he says like the Son of Man forgives sins in Matthew 9:6, Lord of the Sabbath, Mark 2:28, came to save lives, Luke 9:56, will be raised from the dead, Mark 9:9. In the courtroom scene in Matthew 26, he directly references that vision of coming on the clouds and being seated at the right hand of God. And so every time that that's mentioned in the New Testament, it brings your mind back to Daniel 7. And it's Jesus saying that he is it's kind of this double title of like in being fulfilling the role of the perfect human and showing us how to live in God's will in his kingdom. But there's also that piece of divinity too, being part of the Trinity, and being the one to sacrifice and serve. And so we get to that. It's interesting because in the Daniel 7 vision, it says that people will be serving him. Like everybody, tribe, tongue, nation will be serving him. But then you get to this, and it's also that Jesus came to serve. And so it's like when Jesus shows up, he's like adding layers onto this meaning of who the Son of Man is. What else did I write down here? I don't remember.
I think that's good.
That's about it. Yeah.
You covered.
Son of Man has a wild range.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it can mean just, lots of times, especially in the Old Testament, that phrase "Son of Man" will just mean human, right?
Because like when I was
person,
after I read this and I went back to Ezekiel one time, Ezekiel's referred to Son of Man,
right?
And it's just
a person. Yes,
a human one.
And so it really, this particular passage, Mark 10:45, it kind of, it's almost a play on words sort of thing.
Yeah.
At that point, it has that double entendre. Am I using?
Double
Sounds
entendre.
right.
That's hard.
I don't know.
It kind of plays both sides of
Yes.
that phraseology there. And so as a servant and as, the Son of Man coming on the clouds, that lordship idea. And it's really interesting because the Daniel 7 thing, the Son of Man was not one of the, first century, Second Temple Judaism, this time frame in Jewish history. It wasn't one of their favorite messianic titles. They sort of, I think you're right, that they would have recognized it, especially as Jesus is, some of those references you pointed out, Craig, he's pretty direct in what he's going for, and so they would have recognized that story, but it wasn't one of their favorite messianic titles, but it absolutely is Jesus' favorite title for himself. And so, there's something, there's something probably there that we ought to unpack sometime, but really interesting. Good job. Yeah.
I talked a lot.
Well, it's not only that it's not that you talked a lot. It's just what you said was almost exactly like you're like, oh, Matthew 9:6 and Mark 2. I was like, okay, so
but it really
forget that.
And when I was studying it, like I said before, I didn't understand the depth of that,
right.
And I'm still kind of like figuring out the layers to it.
You bet.
But when now I read through the New Testament and Jesus says that, it causes me to pause and consider, okay, so this Daniel 7 connection, like what is he really trying to say here, that he is the Lord of the Sabbath?
Yeah.
And why all of a sudden is that going to like rile up Pharisees or whoever,
Yeah. Yeah, man, you hit a lot of it. So I guess I'll say this will be brief because, like I said, you hit a lot of the stuff that I was going to say too, which makes sense because I was going to lead with Daniel 7, and then the other times he's used Son of Man to reference himself and what was he talking about. But yeah, kind of starting off, like before really thinking about this, you have Son of God, Son of Man. Those are sort of the two things you think of, and you think, well, obviously one is deity and one is humanity. And so when it comes to Son of Man, yeah, there's a humanity part of it. But and once again, you had said the same thing, which is like it's more of the example of the way God intended mankind to be, like the ultimate man or the ultimate of mankind, the elevated figure from Daniel 7 is all tied into that. And so really, Son of Man also points to divinity as well, and not just the humanity. It does humanity, but it's not just like, oh, it's one coin with two different sides, and one is they're kind of opposites, showing the same thing. No, there's a lot of the deity of Jesus within that. And then what's really interesting is, once again, the amount of times he says, so the Son of Man, and then he mentions something that is not, can forgive sins, which is not something that you'd see in humanity, or is Lord of the Sabbath. So it's reflecting the deity part. But then here in verse 45, so he starts off with, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And so he is bringing it down to make it practical of like, yes, Lord of the Sabbath and forgiving sins, but at the end of the day, this is this elevated, like the peak of humanity here of representation this was his main goal. And so while I really liked, the sort of the deep dive on what does Son of Man mean, kind of tying it into even question number 6, describe how he served during his ministry, I think is even more important because, we could know about what Son of Man means, but really at the core, it's what was he trying to do with this and what was he trying to show us. And so this was a part of a larger story with James and John wanting, position and recognition and to be seated next to him. And he's trying to let them know, like, no, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. There's a quote I had found which says, talking about how the Son of Man, it refers to the humanity and divine origin, but also pointing to what greatness really looks like within the kingdom. And it says, the pathway to greatness in the kingdom, based off this scripture, is not titles or salaries. It's not recognition or votes or authority. But it's paved with a basin and a towel. And so, the paradox of, being great in the kingdom, the Son of Man, who they were waiting for, he's the one who's leading us and saying the greatness is actually not in all this other stuff, but it's to be a servant and to serve all. And so just looking at sort of the contrast of like he's using this giant title and talking about, and so if you want to be like that, you have to, follow after me. It's going to not look like power, and it's going to not be all this other great stuff, but it's in service to others. So yeah. All right. Good stuff. All right. Moving on to question number 7. So it was interesting when Dave preached is he actually preached 2 different stories. So the first one was the request of James and John. And so, it ends with that verse 45 we were looking at. And then he tells, he preached the second story, which is Bartimaeus, the blind man who received sight. And so the question is, what stands out to you about the interaction between Bartimaeus and Jesus? How does the blind man describe Jesus? And what was important about this title? So we're going to find out about another title that's not Son of God or Son of Man, but what was that interaction like, or the significance of it?
Well, 2 times Bartimaeus in that little story calls out to Jesus and calls him Son of David. So the first time he says, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me," and then it's basically the same thing, "Son of David, have mercy on me," just a little bit later. And that title, again, Son of David, ties us back to the Old Testament and the messianic prophecy of Jesus, lineage. You can trace that in Matthew's gospel. Am I getting that right? At the beginning, tracing the lineage to Jesus. And I think what we see, at least what stuck out to me, like this question is like this interaction, what stands out is you have Bartimaeus who's blind and is, he's begging. That's what his kind of his lowly status of society is presented before us. And there's some knowledge of Jesus, who Jesus is, because he calls out, "Have mercy on me, Son of David," and what we just talked about, and it's 45 goes right into the story. So we kind of have these 2 things in mind of Jesus, Son of Man, this position of authority and power, like it says in Daniel, who he is, and then interacting with someone who is the lowly status of society, and out of Bartimaeus's picture, his side of the story, just his desperation and crying out, and even how his friends people are like, you need to calm down and quiet down, like don't be an embarrassment or whatever, and he just does it again. And I think that really kind of displays the kind of faith and the Son of David is kind of that expectancy of deliverance and saving and salvation, and so that's kind of tied into what Bartimaeus is crying out for, and I see those 2 contrasted things like we just talked about being played out here. And Jesus, like you said, and it says in verse 45, he bends down in a way to serve him and meet him in his spot.
The end of one story says, not to be served, but to serve. And then the next thing you see is him serving.
Which is I imagine people day after day just walk right by Bartimaeus and don't pay attention to him. Right. And then Jesus, who is the Son of Man and Son of David, stops and he says, "What can I do for you?" And extends his hand out to him. And that's just a shocking moment. And I think we can learn a lesson from that desperation kind of faith in Bartimaeus.
Yeah. Something that I thought was interesting that Dave York did really well, or there's a point that he made, and I thought I'd never even made that connection, because to me they seem like 2 just separate stories. And it's just, he's just teaching, part of Matthew or Mark 10, other than not to be served, but to serve. And then we see him serving. But he pointed out for both of these stories, they had asked hey, can we sit on your right hand? And then Bartimaeus is asking, they're both asking Jesus a question. And with both of them, he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And I never you read it, but you don't read them just like back to back. And so in both cases, he asks them like, what do you want? And so like the question is, what stands out to you about those interactions? With Bartimaeus, he had asked like, I have this need, I want to be healed, and it's an opportunity for Jesus to serve and to heal. But with James and John, it was not about a need that they really needed, but like the selfish desire, right? About prestige, about appearing great. And so I thought Dave did a good job of showing that comparison between the two, and then how Jesus responded to both of those by giving the benefit of the doubt. And he's like, okay, well, tell me what you want. Right. And so he's like, we want to be on your right hand. He's like, he's like, you don't know what you're asking, And so, but when Bartimaeus calls out and he says, Son of David, I used to think Son of Man points to humanity, and it does. But with the Son of David, there's an earthly connection now. I mean, it's not so much the humanity part, but it is connecting the royalty to David and to Jesus as the Messiah. And there's a passage from 2 Samuel that says, talking about David, it says, when your days are over. Oh, this is 2 Samuel chapter 7. It says God's promise to David, and it says, when your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. And so the Son of David is in connection with that, and we see Jesus as the fulfillment of that right there. But what was interesting, and kind of the final thought is, Jesus didn't really, like, he accepted the term son of David, but he didn't go around saying that he is the Son of David, because yes, there is the connection between he and David, but he wasn't looking to establish the kingdom like David was. Whereas David established his kingdom by military force. It once again ties back to the verse 45, not to be served but to serve. And so he'll take the Son of David title. He doesn't like rebuke him or anything, but he's also not going out of his way to call himself that. Whereas Son of Man, I think, like you said, he calls himself that more than any other title. So yeah, there's the connection, but also not what he was trying to convey was, I'm just like David in that way. But,
yeah. So if Son of Man in Second Temple Judaism was not one of their favorite messianic titles, Son of David would have been right up there, and for all the reasons you guys have already said, just kind of that they really hope for restoration of the good old days, the Israel as national world power, and not to be ruled over by anybody else, but to be independent and all of those things. And it's interesting that this guy would refer to Jesus as Son of David, because you could say, oh, well, he's acknowledging his ancestry and his family tree, but there's no reason for this guy to know that. That in the Gospels, Jesus is always referred to as Jesus of Nazareth, so not Jesus of Bethlehem, right? Not Jesus of Judea, but Jesus of Nazareth in Galilee. And so there'd be no reason, all I'm saying, for most folks to say, oh, he's the Son of David, other than, and this is a big other than, all the things he has done, right? All the way he has served, and the miracles that he's performed, and the healings that they'd heard about. And so there'd be good reason for them to expect him to be Son of David, Messiah. And so an interesting title there. I think you guys nailed it. It is interesting, the contrast between the questions, and it's a kind of a subtle contrast, isn't it? Because they're both selfish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you meant both stories. I was like, "What's?"
No,
yes,
both,
the people.
Both questions. Both questions are selfish.
Yeah.
We want to sit at your right and left hand. I want to be able. Yeah. Heal me. And but one's asked evidently with a kind of purity of heart, and one with, like you said, a pride, or
like Jesus is fine
arrogance.
if we cry out to him and ask for it.
Right.
But there's a right way and a selfish way.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know. I mean, Jesus sees into the heart and of these individuals, and we can't. But there's good reason to think that Bartimaeus, has in mind, man, I'd like to be able to provide for myself and my family, and he's got some good motives there, and where James and John are sort of, we'd like to be involved when you start putting down these people,
Right? Yeah.
You've kept us from calling down fire from heaven before, but when you start, we'd really like to be on that.
Well, and it's interesting because like the other disciples were upset that they asked.
Oh yeah,
but it's not. You don't get the impression it was because they're chastising them like, hey, that's not what you should be asking. But like, they got you at first.
Yeah.
They're like, that was gonna be me.
Right.
Yeah. And so they were in the same boat too.
Right.
They still weren't seeing it.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to be next week. We'll meet again. We'll be talking about Casey's sermon and see how that goes. And so,
kind of hopping around. We'll be back Mark chapter 4. Next week.
Yeah, we're going not in order. So
That's right.
if you're a little confused by that. But, all right. We'll see you guys next week then.
All right.